Mapleton Iron Crucible. On June 2, 2022, 39-year-old Stephen Durkis was taking a sample of molten iron from a crucible at the Caterpillar Mapleton Foundry in Mapleton, Illinois. The Mapleton Foundry was Caterpillar's main casting operation for heavy equipment components, the kind of facility where the day's work meant pouring iron at temperatures hot enough to vaporize a human body on contact. The pour deck job Durkis had drawn was a sampling assignment on the open crucibles, work the foundry treated as routine. The crucible Durkis was sampling held iron heated to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit, an open vessel deep enough to take a man and his sampling rod and never give either back. The vessel sat directly beneath an elevated catwalk, where pour deck workers had to lean over the rim to draw samples for testing. The procedure was straightforward. The worker walked the catwalk to a position above the crucible. The worker extended a long-handled sampling spoon down toward the surface of the iron. The worker pulled a portion of the molten metal up for the lab. The worker stepped back. The catwalk had no guardrail along the side facing the crucible. It carried no travel restraint anchor, no fall arrest harness, no physical barrier between a worker's footing and the open iron below. The only thing between Durkis and the crucible was his own balance. He stepped out onto the catwalk. He extended the sampling tool toward the rim. He leaned. His footing went. The fall took less than a second. The molten iron took the lower half of his body on contact, vaporizing flesh and bone in the instant it touched the surface. The upper half of his body remained at the rim, draped across the edge where momentum had carried him. He was dead before anyone on the floor could move. Peoria County Emergency Services responded to the foundry floor within minutes of the alarm. There was no rescue to perform. No portion of the body below the rim could be recovered. Durkis was pronounced dead at the scene. He had been on the job 9 days. As for Caterpillar, OSHA proposed $145,027 in fines, cited the company for a willful violation, and named the missing guardrail as the cause. It was the second worker death at the Mapleton Foundry in 6 months. Santa Fe Springs Tuna Oven. On October 11, 2012, 62-year-old Jose Milena was carrying out maintenance inside a 35-foot industrial steam cooker at the Bumblebee Foods plant in Santa Fe Springs, California. The Santa Fe Springs plant was one of Bumblebee's main West Coast canning operations, running rows of large sterilization vessels that processed sealed tuna cans for shelf stability for the company's national label business. The cooker Milena was working on that morning was a pressurized vessel, roughly 35 feet long and wide enough to hold pallet loads of canned product, designed to run sealed cycles of nearly 2 hours at roughly 270 degrees Fahrenheit. He had stepped inside before dawn to work on an internal component. The door was open behind him. Lockout-tagout, the procedure that cuts machine power before entry, required the oven to be electrically isolated and posted whenever a worker was inside. The procedure had not been followed. There was no lock at the breaker. There was no tag on the door. There was no entry confirmation called out across the floor. A co-worker walked past the cooker, glanced at the line, and did not see Milena anywhere on the floor. He assumed Milena was in the bathroom. He loaded 12,000 pounds of canned tuna into the cooker. He sealed the door behind him. He flipped the switch. The cycle started. Steam pumped in. The pressure climbed. Within minutes, the cooker reached 270 degrees and held. Milena was inside. The sterilization cycle ran close to 2 hours from start to opening, a full bake at sealed pressure with no way out from the inside. When the door was finally opened at the end of the cycle, his body was found on the floor of the cooker among the cans. He was pronounced dead at the scene. As for Bumblebee, the company paid $6 million in settlements. Its former safety manager pleaded guilty to a felony lockout violation and received 30 days of community labor. Cusseta robot cell. On June 18, 2016, 20-year-old Regina Elsey was working her assembly shift at the Agin USA Auto Parts plant in Cusseta, Alabama. The Agin plant stamped metal components for Kia and Hyundai vehicles on a line of robotic welding cells, sealed stations where industrial arms moved at production speed under their own programming. The cells were physically caged. Workers entered through a gate when the line was stopped and standard safety practice required the robot to be de-energized at the breaker before that gate was opened. The line ran at the pace the partner automakers' assembly schedules required. Elsie herself was a contract worker placed at Aegin through Alliance Total Solutions, a staffing agency that supplied much of the plant's floor labor. The line had stopped that evening because of a sensor fault inside one of the cells, the kind of fault that froze the robot mid-cycle and waited for a human to come in and clear it. Standard practice required de-energizing the robot at the breaker, with the lockout posted at the cell entry before any worker stepped through the gate and into the work envelope. That step was skipped. The robot was still powered. Elsie and 3 of her co-workers walked into the cell together to find the bad sensor. They reached it. They worked on it. The fault cleared on its own. The robotic arm rotated without warning. It moved at full production speed. It struck Elsie inside the welding station and crushed her against the fixturing. The arm carried welding tips into her body before her co-workers could break the line. They pulled her free as fast as they could move. Paramedics transported her to East Alabama Medical Center in Opelika. Her injuries were beyond what the hospital there could treat. She was airlifted to UAB Hospital in Birmingham. The trauma team worked through the night. The injuries were too severe. She was pronounced dead the following morning at UAB. Inside her apartment, the wedding dress Regina Elsie had bought was hanging in the closet. The date she was meant to wear it was 13 days away. Hanford Meat Batcher. On February 21, 2011, 72-year-old Leopoldo Gutierrez was cleaning a commercial meat batching machine at the Central Valley Meat Company facility southeast of Hanford, California. Central Valley Meat was a large beef processing operation in the Kings County Farm Belt, running production lines that turned out ground product for grocery chains and institutional buyers across the state. The plant ran round-the-clock production, with sanitation crews moving in during the gap between shifts to wash down the equipment before the next run came online. The batcher Gutierrez was cleaning that morning was a large industrial grinder, fed from above through a wide hopper. The auger underneath ran at full production speed whenever the unit was powered on. The auger blades were arranged in a long screw down the center of the chamber, designed to draw meat forward through the casing and push it out through the grind plate at the far end of the machine. Cleaning the batcher required reaching inside, hands and arms, into the chamber where the auger lived, scrubbing the metal between production runs. Lockout-tagout required the machine to be de-electrified and physically locked off at the breaker before anyone reached in. Neither had been done. The power was still live. The switch was unlocked. There was no tag on the line, no posted sign, no spotter standing watch. Gutierrez was inside the chamber with his arms in the auger when another worker walked past the line in the pre-dawn dark and thought the machine was empty. He reached for the switch. He flipped it. The auger engaged. The rotation broke Gutierrez's neck. Coworkers down the line shut the unit down and pulled him free of the chamber. He was pronounced dead at the scene before sunrise. As for the plant, Cal OSHA cited Central Valley Meat for failing to de-electrify the machine and fined the company $49,920. The line was running again within the week. Evans conveyor chain. On March 8, 2024, 21-year-old Alyssa Drinkard was working the night shift at the Club Car golf cart plant in Evans, Georgia. The Club Car plant off Washington Road was the company's main assembly operation, a long-running fixture of the Augusta area industrial corridor that ran night shifts when order volume demanded it. Drinkard was a contract worker on a line of stations that built finished carts piece by piece across the shift. Her assembly station sat directly over a moving conveyor that fed parts down the line to the next station. The conveyor was powered by a drive chain that ran underneath the platform, the kind that pulled steadily at production speed whenever the line was active. The chain had no full enclosure. The teeth on the drive sprocket were exposed where the platform met the rail. The space underneath the conveyor was open at floor level. At 9:45 in the evening, Drinkard dropped one of her AirPods. The small white earbud rolled under the moving conveyor and out of reach. She bent down to retrieve it. Her arm went under the platform. The drive chain caught her sleeve. It pulled her in. She was pinned against the underside of the conveyor with the chain still turning across her body. Her co-worker, Faja Smith, reached her first and tried to pull her free, but the angle of the pin and the live chain made it impossible. Smith called for maintenance to shut the machine down. Columbia County firefighters arrived and had to cut and dismantle the metal frame around the conveyor to get her out. The extraction took time. She still had a pulse when they freed her. She was transported to Doctors' Hospital in Augusta. The injuries were beyond what surgery could repair. She was pronounced dead Saturday morning. Across the plant floor, the AirPod was still under the conveyor where she had dropped it. The other one was still in her ear. Perrysburg Solar Press. On October 13, 2025, 28-year-old Cy Doan was operating a hydraulic press at the First Solar manufacturing facility in Perrysburg Township, Ohio. The Perrysburg plant was First Solar's flagship American manufacturing site, running solar panel production lines in the industrial corridor outside Toledo and turning out finished modules at industrial scale for utility projects across the country. The line where Doan worked closed plates at the end of the lamination sequence to seal the panel sandwich. The press Doan was operating was part of the panel laminating line, a heavy stamping unit that closed under hydraulic pressure to bond the layers of a finished solar panel together into a single, weather-tight unit ready for shipment. The plates were measured in feet on each side. The closing force was measured in tons. The machine ran a tight production cycle, plates closing and opening on a schedule, cycle times measured in seconds. The press malfunctioned partway through the shift. The reset procedure required the operator to step inside the press frame, between the upper and lower plates, and clear the fault by hand. The lockout procedure that would have isolated the hydraulics from the controls during a reset did not stop the cycle. Doan stepped into the press envelope. He reached for the fault. The press recoiled. It closed on his chest. The plates compressed in seconds. Multiple blunt force injuries followed in the same instant the closure happened. Coworkers on the line freed him from between the plates and started CPR on the shop floor. They worked on him while emergency services were dispatched to the plant. Emergency services arrived and transported him to a hospital. The trauma team continued resuscitation on arrival. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. But the coroner's report named what the press floor had not: compressive asphyxia. Chest, heart, lungs, ribs. Lower Southampton wood chipper. On December 22, 2025, 68-year-old John Iskra was running a wood chipper on a residential job site on the unit block of Valley View Road in Lower Southampton Township, Pennsylvania. Iskra was the owner of his own outfit, Iskra Landscaping, with decades of experience clearing brush and trees around the Bucks County suburbs north of Philadelphia. He had grown up in Levittown. He had graduated from Neshaminy High School. He had spent most of his working life around equipment exactly like the one running on Valley View Road that afternoon. He was alone at the site that day. The chipper was a commercial unit, the kind fed by hand with brush from the property and powered by a small diesel engine that ran loud enough to fill a residential street. The feed wheels under the hopper drew material in steadily, one direction only. They didn't release. They didn't reverse. They were designed to pull and pull until something on the other side of the drum stopped them. The drum behind the wheels rotated against a fixed bed knife, breaking branches into chips that fired out the discharge chute behind the machine into a pile on the property. At approximately 4:40 in the afternoon, Iskra's right arm caught in the feed wheels. He was a man who had run these machines for 40 years. He knew what the wheels did. The machine kept pulling. He was drawn into the rotating drum. The chipper kept running. There was no one on the site to shut it down. The engine ran on. The brush in the hopper continued through the wheels. The discharge chute kept firing chips out behind the machine onto the property. A family member arrived a short time later, walked up the property toward the sound of the chipper, and found him unconscious near the machine. They cut the engine. They called for help. Police arrived on Valley View Road within minutes. Lower Southampton and Pendle fire crews followed, along with the Tri-Hampton Rescue Squad and the Bucks County Coroner's Office, responding for what was logged as an industrial rescue. The engine was already off by the time they arrived. Iskra was pronounced dead at the scene. Some questions never got answered. The machine had been running for some time before the family member arrived. No one had been on the site to shut it down. If videos like this are what you came for, hit the subscribe button and tell me what to cover next in the comments.